Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Donna Fiesel, and I'm your host of Afternoon Drive Home on IC in Christ Radio, your source for news and entertainment. You can also find us on television, channel 182 on Charter Communications, as well as Abundant TV found on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. And Rob Patch just made the big announcement that we're going to be adding onto the lineup Australia. Yeah, so that's going to be a lot more listeners. We're really excited about that. But thank you so much for watching. You are the apple of our eye. You know, we've said that before, Brian. So I've got Brian Brown with me. And Brian, your title, I never get it right, the Regional Extension Agent at the Alabama Cooperative Extension System.
Correct.
Do I have that right?
Regional Extension Agent, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, you just left a meeting. So,
yes.
And so we get him. This is like his last stop of the day. So
yes,
we're going to drag it out for about 5 hours. No, I'm joking.
I got to go home sometime. Yeah. So.
Absolutely. I'll tell you, you've been my go-to person. And the idea with the cinder block garden has hit it big, because I'm going to tell you the cinder block sales have just went through the roof. I'm pretty sure just in this area.
I should get a kickback for that from some of these.
Both of us, because I've been telling everybody, and everybody's wanting to do it now when they see the roots that this thing is.
Oh, yeah.
It's unreal. I'm still getting tomatoes.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's nice. Since I like tomatoes, that's a real good thing right there.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of people had problems with tomatoes this year, and it was mainly because tomatoes don't like heat. They get real pithy and a lot of disease, and they just quit producing above, I think it's 86 or maybe 90 degrees. They just stop producing, and it has to do with the pollen. The pollen's not as sticky when it gets above a certain temperature. So a lot of people wonder why my tomatoes are not producing. Well, it's because the pollen's not sticking, so they can't get pollinated. So they just stop producing.
Well, do you think the bees may have had a little bit to do with it as well?
Well, bumblebees actually pollinate tomatoes.
We've had a lot of bumblebees.
So bumblebees, what they do is they usually get in there and they kind of, as they rumble, they shake the pollen loose, and it it combines. The flower is a perfect flower, so it has the male and female parts in that flower, but when the pollen's not sticky, it just kind of blows away. So it just doesn't do anything. So that's why people don't have tomatoes when it gets hot. So
absolutely. And great advice on the fruit trees.
Oh, yeah?
I've got to let you, don't let me forget, I'm going to let you take some peach jam home with you
today.
Great.
I love it.
It is good, and it is thick. We use it on ice cream and butter biscuits and everything. But great idea about care for the trees and doing it actually at the latter part of the winter instead of early spring.
Yeah. You can push those pretty far out if you want to. But, making sure that you pull some of the blossoms off. A lot of times you have heavy, especially for peaches, you really need to thin those out with you get a lot of blooms on there, and they're pretty, but after they bloom and they start producing the little fruit, start picking those off and thin them out, and just 2 or 3 peaches, per limb. I think you put 1 every 6 inches. I think it is. I don't know the exact number, but the less you have, the bigger peaches you're going to have. So you really want to thin it out where you can have good quality peaches.
And we noticed that too, because before we started thinning them out, they were kind of small. And as soon as Phil started thinning those off the tree, I mean, it's almost like overnight they just bloomed out.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the reason why. Is just because if you have a lot of tiny little peaches, what happens is all the resources are spread over all those. But if you thin those out, the tree can put a lot more resources, nutrients, water into that, and so they get bigger. So.
It makes sense. I mean, it really does, and it really, really works. But I thought we had killed the trees.
Yeah.
I really do, because we really thinned them out.
Well, and a lot of people, they're scared to prune, but really pruning is essential for any type of fruit, any type of fruit tree. You need to train it well. You need to have your branching correct. There's a lot of things you need to do with fruit trees. So really need to start putting together a program and have one up here in North Alabama about pruning and taking care of fruit trees. So we'll work on that. We'll probably do it maybe in the wintertime, so that way it will, it'll be timely and people won't forget. So if we do it now, people are going to forget by the time it rolls back around.
True.
So we try to do it somewhat in a timely manner as much as we can. So
and it's so timely. You just mentioned timely. It really is. It all depends on the frost, the last frost.
Yep.
You do it before, you do it after.
Yeah. And there's we may get hit with a frost, like a really heavy frost, and it may kill off some of the blooms, and you may not get anything. But hopefully, we don't get those. So there's a lot of techniques you can do. Build a fire. I mean, some people just build put a fire pit out in the middle of their plants, and all it needs is just 1 or 2 degrees above what the tree can tolerate. So it just depends on kind of what you're growing and what variety. I mean, different peaches have different or different apples, whatever you're growing has different chilling hours. And so you got to meet those chilling hours, but then also their tolerance for cold, even when they're in flower, varies among the varieties. So.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm a gardening nut. I didn't know near as much until I met Brian. So lots of techniques and lots of things to learn. We're not in the city limits, so we were actually able to burn off some limbs and stuff we had.
Yeah.
Now I do, Phil asked me what I wanted for Mother's Day, and I wanted a wood chipper.
Yeah. Did you get your wood chipper?
I got it, and I love that wood chipper. So what I did is I used all the fruit tree limbs and that we had cut off, and I chipped those up, little pieces of wood, and I used it for landscaping and put it around the garden, and the bees loved it, by the way. I think that's probably why they didn't go anywhere. Well, why would you go anywhere with all these trees and stuff here anyway?
For sure.
And so that was pretty awesome, but we did go ahead and set some limbs on fire, and which brought up another question. One of my neighbors had mentioned, you could use that ash in your garden. Is that true?
That is true. You can use that. It gives you a quick jolt, but you really have to be careful with it. You don't want to put too much. So it's it's good for it, but it doesn't last long, and you really need to be careful not to put too much for it. So we do have an extension article about using burned wood, but I would recommend it's fine to use. Just use it with caution. So that's the biggest thing is we want to caution people. Say, hey, well, how much is enough? I don't know. You really need to do a soil test. That's really the first thing you need to do is a soil test. That way you'll know what your pH of the soil is. Then you can add, your ashes accordingly. So that's the most important thing, though.
Now, Roger across the street, when I mentioned the soil test to him, Roger Ritchie and Mary, who live over there, and they're awesome neighbors, and we just kind of like watch each other and see what each other does, and just kind of feed off of each other. And so he had mentioned some of your blooming flowers depends on the pH.
Yeah,
the color they turn out.
Yeah, well, hydrangeas, specifically hydrangeas, they will change colors based on the pH, and I forget which way it goes. But if you have a higher pH, it will change to a pink or a blue, vice versa. So I think the more acidic it is, I think it turns more pink. So if you have a hydrangea, especially the older varieties, you'll have either a pink or blue depending on your pH or your soil. A lot of the old timers, what they would do is they would take rusty nails and they would put them in the bottom of the planting hole. Yeah, and it would change the color of them. So if you don't like the color, just change your pH. On hydrangeas.
And there's plenty of them on this farm. We see them out there in all kinds of buildings. But because Mother was trying to figure that out too. Yeah. And so she had cut off a limb and rooted it. And she said, why is it a different color here than it is there? So I guess that explains it, just different pH levels. Now, when you're having a test done, you have to get soil from different parts.
Yeah, so what you do is, the best thing to do, and what we recommend for our instructions on taking the soil test, you take a 5-gallon bucket and just kind of go in a zigzag pattern around your yard. And honestly, for me, I feel like if you have the same general soil type around your area, there's not any slopes or anything like that. It's just kind of your yard. One sample will be fine. If you have a pasture versus a yard, you might want to get 2 different samples. Or if you've heavily fertilized an area versus another one, you may want to do that. But when you take your sample, just dig down 3 or 4 inches and put it in the bucket, and then at the end take about 20 of those samples, and then at the end just stir it up in your bucket and then put it in the soil testing box. And you can get a soil testing box at the county extension office. So here in DeKalb County, you go to Fort Payne and pick it up from there. Just depends on what county you're in. So every county office will have soil testing boxes, and if you find me on the road, you can stop me because I've got some too. So
Yeah, we'll just stop him when he's driving down the road.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and lots of really interesting questions came from the last time you were on the show, which is still a few weeks ago. And this was about planting for the fall,
Yes.
fall gardening.
Yes. If you're going to plant for the fall, one thing you want to do is if you had a garden this summer, you really need to clean it up. That's actually, we had an article come out today. I mentioned in the article, I don't know why, but I'm not a gardener.
Yes,
I'm not a gardener.
Is too. Yes,
But yeah, they put in an article today about fall gardening. So if you go to aces.edu, it's probably on the front page there. So, but essentially, you want to clean up any debris that you've had from your leftover garden. It's a little late, honestly, to plant some things by seed because it may not produce. So at this point, it's September, you may want to do transplants. So. You can try some seed if you want to, but I would, to have better luck, I would go with transplants.
Because we never know, there could be an early frost.
That's right.
We're in Alabama. We could have all 4 seasons.
We might have snow. We've had that before. So especially in the springtime, we've had tornadoes and 70 degrees, and it got 8 inches of snow that night. So and that was in Auburn. So it can change dramatically here in Alabama. So.
But yeah, I mean, about the seeding, I mean, that's exactly right. So, and then another question, and actually about 4 or 5 people brought this one up, and that is, if I planted my tomatoes in one part of the garden, should I alternate crops?
You can. It's generally good practice to do that, just to rotate things around. And the reason why you do that is because there may be something soil-borne that's in the soil that attacks, your tomatoes or your corn or whatever it may be. Corn is, corn will just strap the soil of any nutrients. Corn's just, it eats up nitrogen especially. So you may want to rotate it with peas. Peas are leguminous plants, legumes, they produce their own nitrogen. So you may want to put your corn where your peas were this year. And so rotate that back and forth. Another thing you might want to look out for is nematodes. So nematodes are like tiny little worms that get into the root of the plant, and they're microscopic. You really can't see them. But what happens is, if there's nematodes everywhere, but there's a few in particular, like the root knot nematode or spiral nematode, and they are very bad for your plants.
Those are the demon ones.
Yeah, they are demons. And so what they do is they dig into the plant root and they make little nodules. And so if you pull the plant up and there's these little knots all over the roots, it's nematode damage. And the sign that you see that you have nematode damage is it looks like the plant is dying of drought. And technically it is dying of drought because those nematodes are stopping the water and nutrient flow up the plant because it's a little worm inside the root. So the plant can't take up any water and it dies of drought, even though it's a nematode. So
even with all the rain we've had.
Even with all the rain, just it can't take it up.
Well, how can you treat them, or can you?
You can. What you want to do is you want to solarize. Solarization is the easiest and cheapest thing you could possibly do. They make nematicides, which are, something to kill nematodes, but nematicides are just there's special ways you have to handle it. The best thing to do is solarize, and not only does solarization kill any nematodes out there, also kills weed seed. So it's really important to do that. So if you want to do that, it's a little late right now. You want to do that around August when it's really, really hot. You could probably still do it, but it's going to get less and less. As you need about 6 weeks. So, but what you do is you take clear plastic. It has to be clear plastic, not opaque, clear. Not black, clear. Let's be clear. But you really want clear plastic, and you want to, till up your garden, clean it up, till it up, and then wet it down really well. Cover it with your clear plastic, and then seal it up. So put some dirt around the edges, and then put some bricks or something, some logs or whatever you got, some lumber, just something to weight it down to keep it from blowing. And in the hottest part of the end of the summer, that heat will get up to 100 and 170, 180 degrees, and it kills any weed seed or any nematodes that are in there. So really good for your soil. It's a good practice to do that ever so often. So If you had a lot of problem with weeds this year, you may want, and you don't, especially if you don't want to do a fall garden, totally fine to just go ahead and solarize everything, and then you'll be ready for fall.
Got to be clear though.
Yeah, it's got to be clear.
To be clear. To be clear.
Yep, got to be clear.
You know, I may have accidentally done something right. And this is, I noticed I planted about 30 tomato plants. But I had one that had these weird looking bugs on it. And I've never seen bugs like this before. And it was right on the very end. And so I decided instead of treating it, I just dug the thing up and threw it away. But didn't get on anything else.
Interesting.
So did I accidentally do the right thing? Oh, another thing I did, I got some hydrogen peroxide and put it in the ground where I dug up that tomato plant. Actually, the tomato plant just went right up.
Okay.
Now this is one of them I had planted on the ground.
Okay.
It was one that just came up volunteer, left over from seeds from last year.
Yeah.
But I had no problems with the ones I put in the cinder blocks.
Yeah. So it's probably something soil-borne, like a root rot or something like that. Excuse me. And it could have been that. I mean, it could have been a myriad. Yeah, it could have been a million things. So, you know, I would not recommend any like peroxide or anything like that. You know, just keep it normal. You don't have to do anything fancy. You know, we get a lot of calls, and you know, you see things, especially the younger generation that are on like TikTok and things like that. You know,
watch some of that stuff.
Yeah, they go for these, I guess you would call it home remedies or whatever. And some of those do work. There are legitimate ones out there, but there's so many that are not legitimate, that are not science-based. And that's what we do at Extension, is we have to relay science-based information. So that's very important that we do that. And the reason why is it's proven, you know, and otherwise it's just anecdotal, you know.
Well,
so,
I'm glad I listened about the trees, the fruit trees, because I had, and be careful with YouTube.
Yeah.
I had watched several YouTube videos that said, only do it in the fall, only. And we've done that before, and it just didn't work out.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, just we battle things like, for example, one of the things I've seen on there is, you know, Dawn dish detergent, you know. People will spray that on their plants, and that's not good for your plants, especially when it's hot. If you spray your plants with Dawn, yeah, it will kill the bugs.
Kill your plants too,
but it will kill your plants too, and that's the problem. That you
I don't
have
want the
to.
plant killed.
It's called phytotoxicity, and phytotoxicity is basically you're burning your plant, and you don't want to do that. So, if you're going to use any kind of soap, use a horticultural soap. It's milder. It's, you know, it's pricier, of course. You know, you don't have it normally, but you won't kill your plants with it. And then, you know, there's other remedies like horticultural oils. I can't say that because I'm from Walker County. So, but
I can't. I'm from DeKalb.
but horticultural oils are they're good for killing all types of insects. You know, it's considered organic. But you really need to be careful when it gets hot, because guess what? When you put oil and plant leaves together, you basically fry them. I mean, that's literally what you do. Is when it's above 90 degrees, you end up frying your plants. So,
ask some of the girls I went to school with who used to go lay out in the sun and put butter on themselves.
Ooh.
It ruins your skin.
Yes.
It ruins so a plant leaf is very much like your skin.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it will get, you know, it does multiply that heat when it gets on there. So if you're going to use a horticultural oil to control bugs, make sure it's below 90 degrees. So, but it does work well. So, and it's organic.
The folks that I have seen on YouTube that have said Dawn dishwashing detergent, I think they work for Dawn. They're just giving them
Maybe.
They do.
So,
because they're also the ones who said, oh, I want only totally natural stuff on mine. So, well, that's not natural. I mean,
absolutely not. And, you know, honestly, if you have insects on there, things we recommend that work really well are Spinocid. Spinosad. It's like Spinosad. Spinocid. It's an organic insecticide. It works really well. It's broad spectrum, so it kills a lot of different things. The other one is BT, and BT it stands for Bacillus thuringiensis. I probably mispronounced that.
Did a good job.
But it's a bacteria, and BT is very, very common. It's very old. But it will kill insects. So Yeah, it's very common. You can get it anywhere. Any co-op, Tractor Supplies. Anywhere that sells chemicals will sell
Try and buy
sell that.
local if you can,
Yeah,
if at all
absolutely.
possible. But some of these things you can also find on Amazon. And
Yes, yes, you can.
mm-hmm.
There's a lot of great websites out there, but it's very common. You just go down to your local store and they'll probably have that.
I like going
So,
to the local store. They can kind of, especially somebody who's owned this business for a long
yep,
time, they can tell you what to do.
yep,
Some more questions come out of potatoes. People are planting potatoes now.
yes,
What are
yes.
the do's and don'ts of planting potatoes?
Well, I don't know a whole lot about potatoes, just to be honest. There's, if you're going to plant them in clay soils, you may end up with a tiny potato. That's about the only thing I know.
I want a big one I can eat
Yeah,
steak with.
yeah. The sandy soils do a lot better with things. They got some room to grow and stuff. So, they're in the same family as tomatoes. So they're a Solanaceae crop. So,
Okay.
some problems you see with tomatoes, you may see on a potato also. So, but as far as planting them and things, I don't know a whole lot about it, just to be honest.
Now, I'll tell you
So,
one thing I knew not to do is plant them in the cinder brick blocks
yeah,
there, because if
yeah,
you
they need
want,
some room.
they can't just be cramped like that. I
Yeah.
would think they would rot or something. You got
Yeah, they may do that. So, but yeah, there's I just don't know a whole lot about potatoes. So sorry.
He will next time, I promise
Yeah,
you.
I'm gonna do some homework.
Yeah.
So
And then also seeds. And I will tell you this, Brian. I have seeds, a couple of freezers there. I have seeds. My granddad passed away in the year 2000. I have seeds he saved
wow.
from way before then.
Mm-hmm.
And they're still working. I guess we keep them in the
Sure.
freezer. Is that right?
Yeah. So seeds can last a very long time, and keeping them in cold storage is a great idea. Uh, some seeds become less viable as it goes along. So, I mean, there's been seeds that were found in the Egyptian tombs,
I've heard that.
and they still produced.
Wow.
So it really depends on the type of seed it was, and I don't know what they found in the Egyptian tomb, but it's still pretty cool that they lasted.
Yeah, it's
Ever how many thousand years it was. But some seed lose viability after a year. Sometimes it's 10 years or maybe 20 years. So that's very subjective about what type of seed it is. But keeping them in cold storage, dry cold storage is the best. Try to put it in a brown paper sack, and label it with the year. That's very important. Label it with the year. Don't use it in a Ziploc bag if you can help that. The little seed packets, it looks like the little envelopes. Those are great for.
That's what my granddad.
Seeds, so.
I decided to stay with whatever his trend was, and that's what it was. Now, actually, he used also like just regular sack bags that you. Of course, you can't get them now; it's all plastic. I wish I'd go back to asking you if you'd rather have plastic or paper. I'd say paper.
Yeah.
Which would be better for the environment. It really makes sense. But anyway, start on that topic. But what he would do is put the seeds in the bag. He'd just cut one, and then he'd put it in a big envelope. So that's how we kept it. And I figured it must work because we got some beans this year, some peas this year, seeds that he had saved.
Well, good. Yeah, that's and pea seed. According to my parents, they planted a lot of peas, and they love peas, and I love peas. But they can't find the original peas that they used to grow, the purple hulls. But they finally found some, and so they're saving their seed every year and trying to get those same peas. So, but yeah, saving seed's great. I recommend it to everybody because we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, just to be honest, it's a good way to get started.
Yeah. I'm telling you, we've all made fun of preppers. Well, the preppers, I think, knew what they were talking about.
They did. They
did. Really do. I'm not laughing anymore.
Yeah,
I'm not. But you got to be able to get your food, and you've got. And there's something satisfying about raising your own garden, by the way, and your own food.
Yeah, and
it's incredible.
It is, and I kind of feel like that's ingrained into our and that's what we were made to do, is to garden, and I think that was what we originally were planned to do, and we all took different ways of life. So
we did. Tom Williams is a good friend of mine. He gave me my start in television years and years ago in Jacksonville, and his wife works for the government. And he said, you know what Nancy does? He said she just has to work. He said, I used to fuss with her about working all day long, the stressful job, but she loves gardening. And so one day he said, I just went out there and took the hoe away from her and said, what are you doing? You've worked hard all day. And she said, I have to. It's my release.
Yeah.
She said, I love this. And she said, and he said, well, just talk to me about your job. And she said, if I told you, I'd have to kill you. So she knew
Yeah.
some secrets and she couldn't tell anybody. But
Yeah.
it's a good release for people. And people are having urban gardens now.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's really growing, especially in the big cities. They'll have community gardens, and it's a way to kind of bring the community together.
Yes.
And there's some issues that do come with that. If you have something that's ripe, a lot of people will pick it too early, and you have to worry about that kind of stuff. But it does give the community something to kind of rally around. So that is becoming a big thing, especially in larger cities, and also to address the hunger problem, because hunger is not just somebody going hungry. It's there's food deserts out there, which means there's not enough fresh fruit and vegetables to go around for people, and they end up eating fast food all the time, and it's just they're
That's
just
not
not
good.
nutritionally. It's a desert, and so any type of community inner city gardens it's just really taken off. So.
It was really big in Charlotte, North Carolina, and they went into the inner city for people. Yep. And so someone actually donated a lot. It was where a business was, and they donated a lot. So a lot of folks went in there and started volunteering and teaching people how to raise their own food.
Yeah.
And that was a great thing because people didn't realize.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially kids. Kids don't understand where their food comes from.
They caught on to it quicker than their parents did.
Yeah, yeah. And it's amazing that, so many kids out there really don't know where their food comes from. I mean, it's very simple, but, I think kids get amazed when they can plant something in the ground and then, a few weeks later they have something that they can eat. It's amazing, yeah.
I mean, when I was a kid we grew up in Chehaw Acres in Oxford, Alabama. We didn't have a bunch of land. And, of course, Mother always had some kind of a garden out there. But we would come here and stay for about 2 or 3 weeks in the summer as soon as school was out. I was captivated by it.
Yeah.
I just thought it was just amazing that you plant a seed and tomatoes come out of it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. It is amazing that everything that plant needs is in that tiny little seed. It just needs water, So
it's that simple. It's that
basic. It is. It's very basic. Sunshine and water. That's generally.
Too
That's all you need.
Too much water.
That's right. Too much is like not enough.
Absolutely. We're going to have to go into a commercial break, and we're going to be right back in just a few minutes. You guys just hang in there. We'll be right back. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Donna Fiesel, and I'm your host of Afternoon Drive Home on IC Radio, located in the town of Geraldine, Alabama. I'll tell you what, Brian, a lot of folks know about Geraldine, Alabama now.
Yeah.
They sure do. I was so fascinated. I was talking with our mayor, Chuck Abels, yesterday. He was on the show, and he was telling me about somebody that saw us talking, and I guess it's the Abundant TV, and they decided they want to move to Geraldine.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was somewhere up north. I forgot where he said it was. He was waiting on his wife is a school teacher.
Mm-hmm.
They're waiting on her to retire next year.
Yeah.
And so they've already been out here looking for land. And
wow.
They know they want to move here.
Well, it's interesting that I get a lot of phone calls from just all over Northeast Alabama, and I would say probably at least half of the calls I get are from out-of-state numbers, and they all say, I've moved here in the past 2 years. I mean, literally, the people that are out of state have moved here in the past 2 years. So there's something about this place, I guess.
Yeah,
so
it's that nice, friendly Southern accent.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But it is fun though.
To do. I mean, especially you to have somebody like this in your area who can help you out. Now there are trainings that are available.
Yes.
We have more questions, but let's talk about your trainings.
Sure. There's a lot of those happening. So I'm on the home grounds team, which means that we do anything to do with the home landscape, your garden, or even home pest, which was a learning curve for me, learning home pest. But if you have things in your house like roaches, and I've had bat calls and pigeons, and I hadn't had any snakes.
Calls, I'll go get them.
Yeah, I hadn't had any snakes yet, and I won't deal with that. But yeah, home pest, home grounds. That's what we say: home grounds, home gardens. That's what we do. That's my team. But we also have a commercial horticulture team that does commercial horticulture. So like row crops, growing, several acres to sell. We also have nutrition. So we have nutrition programs. We have SNAP Ed. So if people, they used to call that food stamps, and they have education programs for people who need food assistance. There's that. 4-H is part of that. Everybody knows 4-H. 4-H is part of Extension. And gosh, business, if somebody wants to start a business, we do that too. We help with starting businesses, especially on the agriculture side. So we have actually my next door neighbor in my office, he does agribusiness. So if somebody comes in and wants to start a farm, he can help them do the analytics and tell them, hey, this is what it's going to cost you to start up a farm. So we do a lot of stuff with Extension. Program wise, it's any number of things. I did a talk for a garden club this morning, and I talked to them about how to plant trees properly. So we do things like that. We put a fire ant program on a couple weeks ago.
We need to talk about fire ants.
Yeah, so I know all about fire ants now. So
well, we can have a 2-hour topic just on that.
Yeah, so but we do a lot of things like that. That's timely. We try to do timely things. Like I mentioned earlier about the fruit trees, we may try to do one this winter. But yeah, we have lots of different programs. The best way to do that, if you want to find out what programs are happening in our area, is to call the local extension office, and they have an email list, and you can get on that email list, and it will tell you, this is coming up. We usually try to plan a couple of months in advance, so we try to give people at least a little bit of a warning, and then they can come and sign up online and come to them. A lot of our events are free. Sometimes there's a minimal charge. If we have lunch or something like that, we'll either try to get a sponsor or we'll buy it ourselves.
Oh, but if you had to pay for that knowledge, it costs a lot more.
Yeah, so we try to do, it just depends on what the program is. Usually, if it's like we did a program down in Coleman County called on pecans, and it was all about pecans. It was a half day. I think it was like $10-15, something like that. So it's minimal cost, but we also have to cover like our travel cost and a lot of that stuff. So, but most of our programs are free. So, and we offer a lot of online programs too. So, there's just a lot of stuff happening. There's a lot of moving parts to Extension. So, I'm just a very, very tiny piece of this puzzle. So,
you got to go check out the website. You can find all kinds of valuable information there as well. One of those I saw after you left the show last time. I checked out the website, and I don't know if I can find it real quick, but it was about farmers markets and how they can accept SNAP.
Yes. So there is a program, and I don't know a ton about that, but they have a voucher program, so you can use those SNAP cards or whatever you get now in the farmers market. So they also have a senior program, and I don't know if that's still going yet, but if you're a senior, they had a program at one time They may have done away with it yet, so don't quote me
No,
on that.
I saw it in there. I just briefly looked at it. 'Cause
Yeah.
I'm a senior now. I look for those things.
Well, that's they give you a food. I think it's like $35, but you can use that at the farmers markets to buy
Okay.
food, and so all you have to do is apply for that. So
I might do that just so I can check out some of the other farmers and see how they
yeah,
do
and like I said, I don't know if that's still going or not, but I know they were doing that. So
And we have a farmers market right here in Geraldine too at the park.
okay,
And they just ended it. So anyway, you know how much they charge to have a booth there?
how much?
Zip.
Oh wow,
They charge nothing, and they're probably the only farmers.
Yeah,
market
most of them charge
nothing.
a pretty good bit
So if you're a
sometimes.
farmer and you're in this area, it can be anything, candles, just whatever you make. Okay, you can actually be part of that.
Yeah, they've changed a lot of the rules on the farmers markets and the cottage food law. I don't you know about cottage food law? So cottage food law, it was passed in the Alabama Senate or the legislature. I guess last year, and they changed a lot of the rules. So it used to you couldn't have anything baked unless you had like a food license or like an industrial kitchen. Yeah, so they changed that law. So now you can sell, and again, don't quote me on this, but you'll have to look it up on your own.
Look it up.
But I know you can have like baked goods, things like that. Anything that's not non-acidic. So like you can't sell a can of tomatoes.
Yeah.
You can't do that. But there's other things that are canned that you can sell.
Pickles you probably can.
Yeah, something like that. That's not acidic.
Jams, jellies, and stuff.
Jams and jellies. That's definitely in there. Pickles may not be because it's acidic.
Yeah.
But yeah, they changed the laws a lot on that. So any kind of baked goods for sure.
Yeah. We'll have
Jams and jellies, and like you said, candles and things like that are totally fine. And those are great markets. I mean, that's literally the market where you need to take some of your homegrown products or homemade products. It's a good opportunity, and you don't have any overhead. So
and that's the ultimate. It's made from home. I mean, that is the absolute ultimate. You mentioned something about fire ants just a few minutes ago, and I have been eaten alive this year. Is it because of all the rain, or what in the world?
So fire ants are there.
Yeah, they're there.
Yes, sometimes we find out when we're not wanting to. But fire ants are just in the soil. They actually stay underground most of the time. When it rains, that's when they mound. So if you pay attention out in your yard after it rains, like right now, they'll start building up. Because what happens is that groundwater starts rising, and then they bring their whole colony to the top. And so that's why you get those big fire ant mounds.
Okay, so that's why in droughts you don't see as many.
Exactly, they're deep.
Okay.
So they get when it's dry, they get deeper, and as it gets wet, they build their mound above the soil. So if you want to control fire ants, the only thing that you can do to effectively treat fire ants is put a bait out. Fire ant baits like sprays, they're not going to work. You can't spray enough on a fire ant mound because, you'll kill a few that are on top, but it doesn't actually do.
Well, they reproduce pretty quick, I think.
They do reproduce really quickly, but what happens is the bait. A lot of the baits are actually grits, so they use corn grains, grits, and they will impregnate that with or coat it with an insecticide, and so. You put that and you spread it all over your yard, and if you're using something like Extinguish Plus, that's a brand name. We like to use that because it's got two different ingredients in it. It's got hydromethanon in it, which is a kind of like a knockdown. It will give an initial kill, but then there's also an insect growth regulator in there, and so that insect growth regulator. They take the forager ants takes that grit and they take it back to the colony and they feed it to all the maggots in there and it kills them. So then you stop. And it's a longer process. It does take a little longer to see complete kill, but you should see something within at least a week, and then 2, 3, 4 weeks down the road you start seeing much better control. So you get that initial knockdown, and then after that, you start getting, 3 months down the road, you're still getting killed.
I hate those things.
So there's actually, there's Advion, that's a name brand that we use a lot, and then Extinguish Plus. Extinguish only has one ingredient, but Extinguish Plus, you can get that at the co-op.
Okay.
You may have to order it, but they can get it for you at the co-op. But Extinguish Plus is great. It's really a light seed because it's grits. So think about taking a bag of grits and throwing it out in your
Mm-hmm.
yard. We actually, a lot of our extension offices have what's called a herd seeder, HERD, and the herd seeder is actually made to throw and spread tiny seeds.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to seed your lawn, if you want to spread out fire ant bait, the herd seeder, call your local extension office and get them. Ask them if they have a herd seeder. A lot of our offices do. I know Etowah County has one. We gave ours away. Marshall County, we gave ours to Blount County because we ran out of room. But they're out there, and it's free. So if you want to borrow one, you just sign it out and bring it back. That's important.
Bring it back.
You have to bring it back. But we do, rent that out for free. You just sign it out, and we ask that you bring it back in a timely manner. So, usually you can borrow it and bring it back within a day. It's got a 3-point hitch on it. It's got a receiver hitch on it. It's got a bolt. You can just, if you got something that you can put a bolt through on your 4-wheeler or whatever it may be, it will fit. Now you can even put it on the back of a truck.
Oh,
so
okay.
Yeah, so it's good, and
so
it's
there's
got
help.
Yeah, there's help, and there's it's sized appropriately for that, and we kind of give you some instructions on how to use it, and it's very easy to use, and we did a football field in probably 10 minutes the other day.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it goes really fast.
Okay.
So and the bait,
so
the bait's around, depending on how much you buy, it's anywhere from 10 to, let's say, $30 an acre. So that's not really that expensive.
I would have spent more than that.
That's right. So it's
it's
effective, and I highly recommend people do that. So that's the step one. That's a lot of words for step one. But spread it out, spread it evenly all over your yard. The ants will find it, and they will take it back to their colony. Step two is if you still have some mounds, you can just take you a teaspoon and just dribble a little bit on the mound. And it's a grain, so it's granular. Just dribble it a little bit around that mound, and it will take care of that.
Should you do that on a clear day when it's not?
Yeah, so you want to wait about 8 hours of sunshine, or at least 8 hours of no rain. So honestly, the best way to test and see if they're foraging, they love plain Lay's potato chips. I don't know what it is about plain Lay's, but they love them. I do too. And but they
I can understand why.
Yeah, but you take a plain Lay's potato chip, and they're attracted to the vegetable oil in it.
Oh, okay.
So that's what they're fried in, and you take that chip and just throw it out in your yard. Within 30 minutes, it will be covered with fire ants. So they will find that, and that's when you know this is a good time to put out the bait, because what they're doing is they're going to take it back to their colony. So the foragers, they're hunting that kind of stuff. So once they find it, they put out that pheromone. It's like, hey, there's food here, come get it. And so that's the same thing with the fire ant bait, and that's why they use corn. It's because they're attracted to that.
Now let's talk about lawns, because right now everybody's got a pretty lawn. We've had so much rain and
some of us do, some of us don't.
Well, we've had plenty. We've got a pretty green lawn. So how do you take care of it? How do you get ready for the winter months?
Yeah, so really the best thing you can do, I would not put any fertilizer out right now. It's a little bit too late for most fertilizers. I would start looking at buying some pre-emergent. So a pre-emergent herbicide is really what you want to do on your lawn right now, because that if you've battled weeds all summer, use a pre-emergent, especially burrweed, lawn burrweed, or stickers. If you've ever heard stickers,
I felt them. I go barefoot outside.
Yeah, so if you've had stickers, that's lawn burrweed. That is a winter weed, and you really got to take care of that on the front end in the fall. So we usually say, October is a good time for pre-emergent. You can buy granular or liquid. Granular is really easy to put out. You just kind of spread it out there with a spreader. Put that out there, let it soak in. Rain activates it, puts it down into the soil profile. But put that pre-emergent out, and that will stop any seed from germinating. So if you're going to overseed your lawn with rye, not a good idea to put out pre-emergent, because it will kill all your rye. Most people don't do that because they're tired of cutting grass, or I am at least. And but put that pre-emergent out. There's several name brands of it. There's atrazine, there's prodiamine, And these are all chemical names, so I apologize. But atrazine, prodiamine, pendimethalin.
You find those at the co-op, right?
Yeah, you can get all this at your local co-ops. They carry a lot of this stuff. Just tell them you need a pre-emergent herbicide, and that will keep those plants from emerging. So if you miss that opportunity and you want to get rid of lawn burrweed, because I get a lot of calls on this, you can spray in December, January with a 2,4-D, which is it's actually the oldest herbicide there is. Spray with 2,4-D or a product called Trimec, which has like 3 different active ingredients, and it is a broadleaf weed killer. It won't hurt your grass. You can use it in the summertime even, but use that in the December and January, and that will kill your lawn burrweed before they produce the little burrs. If you wait till spring, it's too late. You're just going to have to suffer through it. But you've got to take care of it in the fall with a pre-emergent herbicide, or at the latest, December, January, with a post-emergent 2,4-D, Trimec, something that will kill broadleaf weeds, because lawn burrweed is a broadleaf weed.
Yeah. And otherwise, you're going to be wearing army boots outside.
That's right. That's right. And it gets all over your pet's feet.
Yeah.
Things like that. So,
now, is that safe for pets?
Yeah. So all that eventually will get washed down into the soil profile, and that's what you want, because those granules will disintegrate and then they kind of spread out into the soil. So they're totally safe. So, but yeah.
Now, before we go, let's talk about the things you can plant right now for a fall garden.
Oh man, there's a lot of things you can go with. It's collard season. Turnip greens, carrots, Brussels sprouts, lettuces, and cabbages, and oh gosh, there's just a myriad of things. And actually, Extension has an app. So if you're really curious about what to plant, there's an app called Sow, S-O-W. And if I can find it, so S-O-W, Sow. And this tells you exactly, see if I can get it up here. So this is based on your location. So it says, what can I plant? And it says carrots, collards, kale, mustard, onions, radishes, strawberries, turnips. And it tells you day by day, based on Extension research, what you can plant on that day. And what's cool about it is if you tap like strawberries, it tells you how many days it takes to harvest. It tells you how much yield you should expect, how much spacing, how deep you should plant it, any notes on there. There's a lot of things you can do on this app. So it's a really cool app. It's free. Just look for Sow, S-O-W, from the Alabama Cooperative Extension. So
and it really does depend on where you live, because just because we're in Alabama, you've got North Alabama, South Alabama.
Absolutely.
Two different climates.
Very different climates. There's a lot of things that will grow in South Alabama that will not grow here. So we're,
it's almost tropic down there.
It is. There's a lot of tropical plants down there, and you wouldn't expect that, but a lot of times they have microclimates down there, so they can, really localize a lot of that thing. So, but yeah, there's a lot of things that we can't grow here that they grow, but there's a lot of things they can't grow that we grow. So, I like a lot of fescue grass. A lot of people have fescue here. It's a little bit marginal here, but a lot of people have fescue. So,
I got a question about banana trees.
Okay.
I have planted one in an area I wish I had not. Okay. They reproduce like crazy.
Yes.
I mean, it's almost like a forest of trees out here at the side. How do you get rid of them?
So I would treat it, it's a herbaceous plant. So it's non-woody. You could spray it with some Roundup if you wanted to. If you wanted to really kill it.
I want to get rid of it.
You can dig it up. Make sure you get all the roots up if you do that. So, it's
you can cut that thing down and think you got rid of it, and tomorrow it's
Yeah.
coming back up again.
So you really have to.
It loves the area.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're actually growing some bananas down in South Alabama now. So
Are they?
yeah,
Well, if some bananas grow off it, I would be okay with it.
Yeah.
But
It's
see,
a
the
little
only
too
thing
cold
that
here.
I just don't like where it is. It's right kind of between the deck at the back and the pond, so it kind of hides the pond view.
Oh yeah.
So I really wish I hadn't planted. I may just plant some out in the pasture somewhere to see
Yeah.
what happens.
Yeah, they get big. I mean, they're kind of annoyance, but you got to dig it up and you got to get every last root. So that's the best thing if you don't
That's
want to
going to
spray
take a
any.
few weekends.
Yeah, if you don't want to spray any herbicide, that's about the only thing you can do. So.
The only thing about spraying herbicide is it's kind of close to the garden. I would just be afraid of water.
Yeah, well, that is something you really need to be aware of if you're spraying, especially like the broadleaf weed killers, like 2,4-D, very volatile. So you spray it. It may be windy that day, or honestly, for 2,4-D, it doesn't even have to be windy. It's just so volatile. It's like, when you see the fumes on gasoline, it's kind of like that. It's very, very volatile. So it may just drift and it may hit your plants, and then you wonder why they die, and it's like, well, you sprayed a herbicide. I'm sorry. So,
because
yeah.
And I had something I wanted to tell you about, and I'm getting back to the concrete block gardens again. A lot of y'all are saying you're going to do it again this year. And I did, and somebody asked me where I got mine at. We got them at Marvin's in Albertville, and they do deliver for free. And if you order at least, I think, $100 worth, and we did. I'm going to order some more this year, so y'all save a few for me. I'm going to do some more. So Mother and I had a project together. Okay, so she plants a garden, and she's always been really good at planting her garden. None of her tomatoes came up. None of them. They all died. But mine came up and flourished like crazy because they were in the concrete blocks, the cinder blocks. And I told her, I said, it may have been because we did have a lot of rain.
Could be.
And she put them in an area that just kind of settled. It's almost like a swamp where she put them, so it wasn't a good place. She said, well, I thought we would have a dry summer this year, and I thought it might be a good spot. And I said, no.
Yeah, you can't make assumptions like that. You never can tell.
God laughs at us when we make those assumptions.
Yeah, that's for sure. For sure.
So, getting started, springboarding, getting ahead for spring. What should we be getting ready for right now for spring?
For spring, I would start planting. There's not a lot other than if you want to solarize, which is kind of a little bit too late for that anyway. But getting ready for spring, you could plant a cover crop. Right now that would be a good thing to do. So plant some clover, or like my dad, he planted Daikon Radish, which I don't know if you've ever heard of, but it's a Chinese vegetable, and they kind of look like carrots, but they're really huge. And if you have a really tough soil, you can plant Daikon Radish, and they go really deep. So it helps break up that soil, and you just plow them under, and then they just become part of the soil, and then you have a pretty heavy organic layer. So, but yeah, the cover crops are great right now. There's all kind of cover crops. Most people do clover or something like that. But yeah, those are great to do right now. And just keep your garden clean. That's one of the main things. Is a lot of insects will overwinter. So if you keep a lot of that stuff out there, they'll find a nook and cranny, and they'll crawl up in there, and then they'll overwinter. Well, then you got insect problems again. So things like Japanese beetles. Those are awful. If you got Japanese beetles this year, the thing to do is you need a grub controller. So use your grub control when it comes out. It's easy to know when to do that. Just look in your local garden center, and it'll have grub control, and it tells you exactly what to do. So look for that in your garden centers, and kill the grubs, because that's where you need to control any of that stuff. And also, it also helps with armadillos. I know a lot of people have problems with armadillos here.
We used to never have them here. What you people from Texas do?
Yeah, they brought them here. They just migrated. I didn't see an armadillo until I was like a teenager.
Phil may have had something to do with this.
Yeah. So, but yeah, they're looking for something to eat, and so what they do is they come into your yard and they dig, and they're looking for grubs. So if you get rid of the grubs, you'll also get rid of that. So,
and then moles
and voles. You know what a vole is? So a vole is almost the same as a mole. Voles are herbivores, so they eat plants. So voles are really bad. They're like a little rat. They look a little bit different, but they're like a little rat. And moles actually eat the grubs. So moles, they still dig and they make tunnels, and all of them do that. But the voles will actually eat your plants. So you got to be really careful with them. If you do have voles, traps are the best way to get rid of them. You basically treat them like a rat. So you set traps by their holes and things like that. that.
And you know, we had a pretty big rat population this year. I guess the chickens brought them in.
Could be.
I don't know.
Yeah,
We were feeding
very
them
well
out.
could be.
Well, instead of now, so we've kind of controlled that now because Phil now instead of just putting the corn out there, we feed them different times of the day, and we don't put so much out there. So I think that controlled them a little bit.
Yeah, maybe
I didn't
so.
know what we were running into.
Yeah.
When we brought them in.
Yeah.
And so manure for chickens, I mean, that's pretty good for your garden too, isn't it?
Yes, it is. The only thing about manures is you really have to watch, especially chicken manure, is it's very high in phosphorus. So phosphorus, excess phosphorus can lead into an iron deficiency. So if you have what we call intervenal chlorosis, that can show a lack of iron. So it's chemical. I don't know the chemistry of it. I made a D in chemistry, but
don't let him fool you.
Yeah, but yeah, chicken manure does have a lot of phosphorus in there, and also if you put chicken manure out on your lawn and you have a pond, that will run off into your pond, which causes algal blooms.
Oh.
So if you have a lot of algae, that's the reason why.
Oh.
So you've put out a lot of chicken manure to fertilize your pasture, and then it run off down into the pond, and then you have a algal bloom.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay, so that explains a lot because my cousins actually rent this land and put cattle out here, and I think that's what they do. So that may be what happened.
Absolutely, and that happens often in a lot of different areas. But honestly, fertilize wise, we always stress get your soil test done. That's number one. As a 1B, I will say do not send in a heavily amended soil. So like raised bed gardens, don't send that to the lab. It needs to be natural mineral soils. And then when you get your results back, if it has under P for phosphorus, if it says high or very high, don't use a fertilizer like a triple 8, triple 10, triple 13. You don't need that because phosphorus does not move, especially in clay soils. It just hangs on tightly to those clay particles, so it doesn't move. Just get like a 3400 or something like 1508, something with a 0 in the middle. That's the fertilizer you need. So most soils, if you fertilize any in the past year or two, just get something with a 0 in the middle.
Absolutely.
So.
Brian, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Absolutely.
I wish we could have had more time.
Yeah.
You guys have a lot of questions, so go ahead and send those to me. I'll make sure and I'll save the list this time, I promise. I think I remembered most of them, though. You can send that to Donna at icradio.media, or you can send a text my way, 256-659-4319. Brian, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you for helping me have a good garden this past year. It's been awesome. You guys take care, and I'll see you with our next special guest coming up in a few minutes.